Good morning and Happy New Year. Today we are starting that three-part series that I told you about in the last video. And it's going to be origin stories of how I got into photography. And today, this is what we're starting with. Yes, it is a Polaroid SX70 land camera. Now, mind you, this is not the specific one that I was associated with that got me into this. So let me put this down for just a second here and have my coffee. Good morning, Cafe Du Monde, go. So with all this being said, let's say it's roughly 1980, 1981. We move from Georgia to Texas, uprooting a kid at the age of 10. That's never fun. I didn't want to leave my friends, but we all seen that story played out on TV, movies, whatever. Well, needless to say, yes, I say needless to say a lot, so get used to it. You probably already are. Me and my mom move in with my grandparents. And from there, you know, typical growing up, you know, 10-year-old kid, you know, you're playing with stuff and everything else. But this one particular thing is my grandfather loved to take Polaroid photos. Never really paid attention to it until years later, actually probably within the last 5 years. Did not know how avid of a Polaroid photographer my grandfather was until I started going through all of the old photos that I've gathered over the years, especially after my mom passed away. I more or less got all the treasure trove of the stuff, and my grandfather was a huge fan of Polaroid from its inception. And I mean, I've found the old Polaroids, the ones that were the peel aparts back in the day. With that kind of explains my grandfather in a nutshell. I mean, I've found Polaroids from our trips to Arizona in the summer in the 80s. Christmases, Thanksgivings, everything, you know, even back in the 70s when we would fly from Georgia to Texas to visit them during the holidays, there were Polaroids then. Polaroids galore. So, needless to say, I grew up around Polaroids. Didn't really pay too much attention to it because it was just a thing for me to see my grandfather pull, you know, Polaroid out, you know. But the Polaroids that we all know that, you know, have been reproduced, you know, like the Polaroid ones and the one steps and whatever they're calling them now. I was used to that. And the other thing is, growing up with my grandparents around, I was given privy to a lot of the Time Life magazines from the 40s and 50s. And that's where my love of black and white came in as well, because let's face it, that's what they were back in the day. Time Life was black and white magazines. So I grew up looking at a lot of those. And I mean, I remember very vividly one of the first photos that I saw was a cover. Well, it wasn't the cover. It was a black and white photo inside of a magazine, and it was a shot of, of all things, Route 66 in the middle of the desert. Honestly, I don't remember where the photo was taken. You know, you don't remember things like that at my age, but you remember vividly seeing that, or at least I do. It was somewhere probably here in New Mexico, but it had the Route 66 logo painted on the highway with a big scenic vista, you know, mountains, and then, you know, big white puffy clouds. So that kind of really sparked it as far as, hey, this is kind of cool. How'd they do this? And so forth. And that piqued my curiosity. But, you know, I really didn't do anything with it. You know, I would use my grandfather's Polaroid every now and then. And, you know, I think when finally, jumping ahead a little bit, when me and my mom finally moved out of their house, my 8th grade year, I took, you know, a Polaroid to school with me with about 3 or 4 packs of film. And this is back when, you know, they were still a 10-pack instead of the 8-pack you get nowadays. So that's why if you're using a Polaroid, it'll never get to 10. It'll get to 8. But, you know, like I said, I took that to school, and that was probably one of the few instances that I really do remember using a Polaroid camera for a lot of stuff. And then throughout the years, we would go to parties. You know, when you get into high school, you get in with the crowds, everybody goes to parties. Or you go to other parties with your friends that aren't associated with high school. And I wound up being the guy that was, you know, the one behind the camera, believe it or not, in the 80s. Late 80s, 90s, I was the one behind the camera taking all the photos. It was just, here, give it to Adam. He'll take them. And I did. And that's what I did. I never saw any of the photos that I remember, but, you know, you never know. So they're probably still floating around somewhere out there. And so, to you generation nowadays, we did not have cell phones, so we took cameras to parties, and believe me, more than likely a lot of those photos do not exist because they were evidence. So keep that in mind. That's a great thing for my generation. We didn't have to worry about it. If there was no photo, it didn't happen. Back to the story. Like I said, this is my origin story. I really have been wanting to tell this for a while now, because it turns out, going back through my family history on my mom's side and my dad's side, obviously my grandfather on my mother's side, you know, was a huge Polaroid user, and that affected me a lot. And even more that I think about it, we always had cameras in the house as well. With me growing up in the 70s, we had the lovely little square Kodak little 110 cameras. We always had those around. So, and then on top of that, my mom with my stepdad at the time, we would go out to grist mills in the 70s, and he was doing large format, taking black and white photos of grist mills in Georgia, which there's a lot of them in Georgia from what I understand back then. I can't speak for today. But me personally, I don't remember ever doing that. But I mean, you know, I was 4 or 5, so I don't know. But mom says I did it, so why would my mom lie to me about that? So yeah, growing up, I've pretty much grown up with cameras around the entire time of my life. And then on the other side, kind of a history note, you know, my mom was already divorced, and then, you know, I saw my dad on my 5th birthday in 75, 76, and then didn't see him again until 2006. So that's a big, huge gap. But it turned to find out that his dad was an avid photographer. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to grab it. I don't have it, you know, bad planning on myself, but I have my grandfather's camera that he used during World War II. Mind you, it doesn't work anymore. I probably need to see if I can get it fixed. I think it's an old Argus, but the lens doesn't even work anymore. But what makes it significant is it's still wrapped and still attached in its original leather case that it came in, and it still has written in pencil all of his settings that he used while he was on, you know, wherever he was deployed to. So more or less saying that, you could say photography runs in the family. It's kind of weird, but, you know, I'm really, honestly, truly, I'm grateful for that, because it's been a hobby now for the last 18 years professionally, not a hobby anymore. but it's more or less, it's been in my life since, you know, that I can remember, since the 80s, growing up around it. And then obviously I started taking pictures, and then I started doing it professionally in 2007. So you could say more or less, it's been in my life, my entire life, for at least the last 45 years. So that's a long time. I really don't want to tell people, you know, I don't tell clients, oh, I've done this for 45 years. No, I can't tell them that. I can tell them, yes, I've done it for the last 18 years, because by then you know, grown up, brain development and all that, you understand how to do all of that. But that's about all I have for now. I just wanted to start this series off, kick it off with you, and show you this is where my journey more or less started, that I remember, is with the Edward Land SX70 Polaroid camera. Great little camera, and believe it or not, to this day it still works. I've got some film around here for it somewhere that I bought at Fort Worth Camera last month. So that's about all I have for now. Stay tuned for the next one. It's really going to be interesting. So yeah, thank you for joining and watching, and I guess I'll see you in the next one.